Okay, well, guys, thank you. Welcome to the lightning talk. So this will be really short, sweet, focus, and it's more something that I didn't know I could do. I learned by trying, and I think it's nice, something nice to know about AWS. So let me tell you, start by telling you the story on how we get here. So this is no more waking up in the night to resurrect dead services. Probably all of you have been on call and you have been woken up by PagerDuty or another service saying that a service is down, a critical service for the project, and you need to wake up and resurrect that. Try to go through the logs, half asleep, understand what happened, and then do whatever is needed to bring back the service to life, right? I remember a true story. I was on one of those projects that wake you up in the night, like every night. My ex-wife was asking me the divorce because of that. and it happened, and it's a shitty situation. No one wants to be there. And I mean, how I wish to have a clone of me reading the logs all the time and doing whatever was needed to keep the services up, right? So I found myself again on that spot recently. I was assigned to a project and say, look, you are going to build the new version of the service. There is this old version, right? And but we need to kind of keep it alive until we launch the new version, and it will be easy, they say. But you need to take care of maintaining this service up. And the new version of the service is sweet, it's great. But then this become hell. The reality, a lot of fire in production, service going down, a service that I didn't author, right? I didn't know the code base. It was a nightmare. Oh, by the way, you are seeing the screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So this service was composed of actually it was an array of microservices, but this service in particular that's giving trouble wasn't even created by the company I was working with, right? It was a vendor that it authored it on some obscure framework like 2 or 3 years ago, and actually it's a black box. It doesn't report. You don't have a way to get in efficiently and get metrics out of it, right? And the problem is that this service, this black box, right, was running on a container service, and it didn't did peaks of, it wasn't a problem on the infrastructure, right? We didn't have peaks on CPU or memory usage. It went in a obscure, not clear enough, not documented conflict state, right? It needed to keep track of a Git repository. They were using Git to something that Git is not meant to, and it went dark, right? It got in conflict. No one knew exactly why the logging wasn't useful at all. And the only way to bring the service back was restarting the service. And I know it sounds crazy, it sounds stupid, but it was the reality, right? And the problem is that the the endpoints exposed by this service that went in conflict were kind of mission critical, so we couldn't be polling on that endpoint to see if the thing was on conflict or not. And I mean, the only thing that we had were the logs, not of the service itself. They were obscure and we couldn't edit much of it. What we could do were the logs of the other services that consume the V-line of this story.
Fabri, one quick question. Sorry to interrupt. Yeah. So these third-party services, these legacy services, were not running in AWS, right?
Yeah, they were within a container. It was a Fargate service.
Okay.
But it didn't pick the memory when it went in conflict. Memory was okay, CPU was okay. The logs didn't say much about the issue itself. We noticed the problem because one of our service yelled and got a 409 back from the service, right? But we couldn't trigger the endpoint to see if it went service like a health check, right? Because the process triggered by that particular endpoint was critical, was mission critical. It was some indexing process. I didn't know much about it, and I tried to go into the code base, and it was hell. Because of the language, I didn't understand much what I was reading. No one could support it. The only thing that they all know, just need to restart it. But the problem is that the restart was manual, right? And we started thinking, okay, we are going to put some message broker. We are going to put a message on this broker when this conflict we saw on one of our service that we can maintain and tweak. And then we are going to alert, get this alert and do something about it based on that. And I thought there must be an easier way. I mean, we are on the serverless era, right? And you got a lot of managed services. There must be a way to do it easily without maintaining components just to get the alarm, right? I got the impression that we could do it without having a dedicated event bus or something like that. And I actually found a nice way, and I wanted to share that with you because I find it useful and interesting, and I see a lot of power. I just scratched the surface and did the simplest solution possible, but you can get very sophisticated with it. So let me show you the architecture. I found out a couple of months ago, I think, or some time ago, AWS changed the, I'm going to put in full screen so you guys can see it bigger. You still see the diagram, right? Yeah, no? Seeing this diagram?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, cool, thank you. So I found that some time ago, not sure how much, AWS started putting CloudWatch working powered by their own internal custom event bus, which is called EventBridge. So all the AWS platform events, those are Lambdas and all the CloudWatch stuff, CloudWatch rules, a lot of stuff is powered internally by this EventBridge. And they started offering their internal server bus as a service, right? So you can use EventBridge. I didn't do even that. I just found that everything is integrated. So I thought, if an alarm is triggered, probably I can get that event an alarm trigger from a Lambda, and then execute the remediation script, which in this case was that simple. It was going to ECS and restarting a service, updating the service, and forcing a new deploy of the service, right? Just directly from the CloudWatch alarm. So the old way was have a topic, an SNS topic, attached to the CloudWatch alarm, and then execute something based on that SNS topic. And I didn't like that third component there, the SNS topic, just to execute a simple script, right? And I found that you can actually execute your remediation script based directly on the alarm. So I put in place something to mock up the problem. It's not, I won't show you the actual service that give trouble running. I'm just going to have a couple of Lambdas. I have an EventBridge rule that forces a Lambda to trigger itself every 1 minute, right? This Lambda will hit the service. In my demo, it's not the service, it's just another Lambda. Get the response back, put the response on a log group on CloudWatch, and then I'm going to show you how you can trigger a custom metric based on the log. I didn't know you could do that. And then with an alarm in place for this custom log metric, you can trigger another Lambda and do whatever you need. And given the new limits on Lambda, you can do very, very powerful stuff with Lambda. And if you need something more robust to execute the remediation script or the remediation method or whatever you need to do, you can use the Lambda to trigger something like a build on a Jenkins server, or a build on code build, or a data pipeline to restore some lost data that you lost by the service being down, right? So let me show you how does it look. So I use serverless, and I have just 3 functions, right? The requester, which is triggered by this rate every 1 minute, and it does just one stupid thing, which is do a request against the service that we need to see if it is up or down, right? A responder that will respond a message and a status that I set by environment. This is just to mock up the service going down, the service returning this conflict error message. And then the alarm state change, which is a CloudWatch event, and you need to configure it this way. So basically you use the CloudWatch source event, and this is to filter from the CloudWatch events only the alarm state changes. And I'm going to show you how you execute your remediation. So the event, later on, I'm going to show you the full example of the alarm change event, but it has a detail in which you have one state, the state of the alarm right now, and the previous state, and then a bunch of metric on each of those objects, right? So if the current state is alarm, this is a constant, and the previous state was okay, then execute your remediation, right? And that can be anything. Right now, if you see my implementation, it's just a stop, right? It's just for the sake of showing you the tool. So let's jump to the good stuff, which is how you do that. First, I'm going to show you the Lambdas working, right? Questions so far? Comments? Okay. So we have these 3 lambdas. These are our guys. The requester is going to do a request against this responder every 1 minute. And the responder responds back. Let me show you that. It's responding back with environmental variables. So I set the state of that particular lambda based on the environment and then log the message and the status code. So what I'm going to do, let me show you one more thing before we start triggering the thing. So I have already created one alarm just for you guys to see, and one log metric, but I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this from scratch with another log metric, right? So whatever goes to a standard output from a lambda by default is going to land on a CloudWatch log group, right? So you guys are going to see a whole lot of logs here. And here is that particular line that I showed a minute ago, right? The message and the status code, right? That which I also get from the event, just for the sake of demoing the alarm part, right? And I'm actually on alarm right now. You can create this alarm based on that particular log metric. So let's first, I'm going to change the environment here so we can leave the alarm state, right? So I'm going to change the status code that is returning, and this is going to return okay. So we will be back in the normal side of things, right? So the next time this lambda is triggered by the other one that every 1 minute is going to log back again the 200 okay message. So so here you can see it was before. If I went back to the other log groups, you see before a minute ago or something like that, we get this 409 error, right? And then we are back on 200, right? Let me show you how you can create a custom metric based just in the log text, right? I didn't even know that you could do that. I mean, maybe something usual. I never did it. And so if you come here you can create metrics for this particular log, right? So you can do text matching or level matching and tweak a little bit though that matching, so you can create a metric, a CloudWatch metric based on that particular text matching, right? So I'm not doing anything fancy here. I know that my bad state will generate a log that will be this, just to keep it simple, right? And here you can put whatever you want to match. There are certain rules to do more advanced matching based on rejects. I'm not doing anything like that. And you can test the pattern against a particular log group, right? If I go to all the log groups in which I was triggering, oh, and by the way, see, the alarm went back to the OK state. I'm going to show you how to do that in a minute. You can see here, I was getting the metric. And the other thing that you can configure based on the metric is, of course, they require you to put a metric, create a metric, a custom metric namespace and a metric name, right? So you can later on use that on graphics and reporting and all that. You can put a value for the metric, and you can pull that from the log. If you do rejects, you then can use $1, $2, etc. to grab dynamic values from the logs. So you will have some service that you cannot instrument an agent on that service. You don't have instrumentation to get visibility on that service, but you could log stuff out and then do text matching and then grab the metrics out. And so it's kind of a clunky agent, but it does the same thing, right? It gives you introspection on the guts of the service itself. And then you can assign those dynamic values using dollar expression. And then the default value, which in this case is 0, right? If I don't have this pattern, I don't want anything to be reported. What I'm doing is just counting the occurrences of the event, right? So you got your metric. Then is super basic and easy to understand. And then you can select this and create an alarm based on that particular metric. So let's create a different metric, right? Let's create something like, I don't know. I want a beer right now. If I test that pattern, of course, I won't get any occurrence because I'm not logging this anywhere, right? And I'm going to just do the same thing. The filter is going to be called beer. I'm just going to use the same namespace for the metric. The metric value is going to be 1, just the simplest thing that we can do with this. And then create the metric. So what I'm going to do right now is create an alarm based on that metric. You can do that by hand, by selecting that particular metric from the CloudWatch alarm screen, but this is like a shortcut. It will get you there without clicking a lot. So by default, you can do a sum, right? But there are a lot of different metrics: an average, maximum, minimum, sample count, the 90 percentile. I'm just going with the easiest thing. And you can select how often you want to evaluate this expression, right? So I'm going to say every 1 minute. And then you can do a static threshold or an anomaly detection. This is passing from one dynamic value to another dynamic value, something unusual, right? So basically, whenever this sum of events is greater than 0, it means when one of those logs appear, let's trigger the alarm, right? Here you can configure how many evaluations need to surpass the threshold in order to consecutive invocation need to surpass the threshold in order to consider it an alarm. Let's say that you evaluate 10 occurrences, and then if the last 5 were positive, then you know you have an alarm. For this particular case, I'm going again with the simplest thing. And then when you just create an alarm and there is no data, CloudWatch is going to tell you that the data is missing, right? How do you want to treat that missing data, right? You can treat it like an alarm. If you don't have any data, that is an alarm, or good, right? Or just ignore, right? We are going to say if we don't have data of that logging, assuming that is a bad thing to happen, is good. And then here is the standard CloudWatch alarm thing, right? Create a topic when it's in alarm and send a notification. But you can remove this. You don't actually need a third component to do stuff with Lambda and EventBridge. So let's create it. So here you can see it wouldn't trigger the alarm because the missing data, right? It doesn't have data to have a state. But if we were to configure data missing like bad, it will trigger the notification if we had a notification in place, right? So let me go back to the log groups just to remember myself what was the expected error message. Oh, because I just remember something. Because of the, and here you can see as I configured this, of when not having enough data being okay, right now the 2 alarms are in the okay state, right? I remember something, let me show you. How I configured this logging. So it's the test message and a status code. I need a status code, right? So just because how this is architected, how is this log put in place? So let's say 500. I'm too drunk because I got my Friday beer, so the server is erroring. Going to save the changes. That shouldn't affect the status of the alarm because we don't have any occurrence of the pattern. And let me copy this message, Friday beer. So I'm going back to my Lambda. and I'm going to change the status to force the happening of the alarm, right? So Friday beer and no, sorry, not this. Friday beer, my test message will be the one that triggers the metric, and then the error code is 500. So updating the state right now. Oops. And then I'm going to go first to the log group. So in 1 minute at least, I should see that error coming up. Or maybe it gets into a different log stream. There you go. So we have already our error, quote unquote, message, right? So let's go to the alarm dashboard. And here you see it updated, right? Sometimes these graphs are not 100% accurate, right? I don't know why, but sometimes you need to refresh them like a lot. I'm not getting the line, but we know for sure that the alarm was triggered, right? So as I said, we have the event of the alarm. So we have the alarm, we should have C trigger the alarm state change, right? So how do we know it happened? So here, these events are digamos, the resolution of the events is the frequency that you put, that you configure to get the messages. You can request what is called high resolution alarms if you need to have more real-time reaction to certain events in your alarms. By default, that is not enabled, but if you send an email to AWS, they enable that. It's a little bit more expensive. So this is the event, and here you can see the state, the value of the alarm right now is alarm. It was okay before. And you can see the data that is parsed by CloudWatch to get information about the alarm. And here you see like the statistics, right? The values that it pulls out from the metric that you have in place. So you can use that to do very sophisticated things, right? I didn't go beyond, but I guess here you can get really like sophisticated and do very complex things like change the status of certain services that are already deployed, or deploy new service, scale up and down different things based on metrics that are totally arbitrary. You can define metrics based on your business logic rather than usual metrics like memory, CPU, and whatnot. So as I said, this is very short, very hands-on. no really fancy things, but this is a service that AWS has that I didn't know about, and I find it really useful, and it helped me from, again, waking up in the middle of the night and not being asked for divorce anymore, hopefully. So that's it. Questions, comments? No?
Fabricio, do you know some alternatives, some open source alternatives? Maybe Logstash or another tool?
Yeah, I know Logstash has some nifty pattern matching. So I guess if you have Logstash, right, and you do the equivalent, let's look for it, but the equivalent for Logstash to match a particular pattern and have that automated, you could trigger something on your own event bus. I've used like a long time ago. I used the Logstash, and we had some custom metric that we pull out from directly from the logs. Now, as it wasn't right, it was actually the DevOps guy that was helping us on that project. But he made with Grafana, he made like this nice dashboard that had certain data pulled out directly from the logs. So I guess you could. The one thing is, if you are already on AWS, this is free, right? If you are not, of course, you need to look for alternatives on the open source. But these are free or extremely cheap. So not sure about open source alternatives, but I think it's worth looking even more based on the recent news regarding this strange elastic licensing model new and the freak out that is around that. I think is worthy a look. So I will research a little bit and come back to you maybe later with some, or next week with some alternative.
No worries. You answered my second question before I did the question. The second question was if it was expensive or cheap.
It's free.
It's awesome. It makes a lot of sense if you're already running on EC2 on Amazon. It makes a lot of sense to use that tool.
Yeah, it's free. For the example that I showed, you could income in some expense for the Lambda that executes the remediation, right? But for the rest, is free or extremely cheap, like decimals of a penny, even.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Any other question or comment, guys? Cool. So that's it. Thanks a lot again for attending to this talk. And if you guys have any question, follow up, or you guys want to share something that you are using and find interesting in your project, just ping me, right? Have a nice weekend.
Have a nice weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.